Welcome back to the Terry and Jesse Show. And I'm having too much fun. I feel like I'm getting a university class taught to me on moral theology from Dr. Larry Chapp. Thank you, Doc, for teaching us.
Thank you.
Hey, and I don't mean to get you in trouble when I ask these questions because you know what? At our age, who cares? I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, in other words, the truth's the truth. But when you talk about these fundamental teachings about moral theology, I wanted to bring up what you said, and I think it's a very poignant thing when you talked about the idea that the church, you quoted Pope Francis as saying that the church is like a field hospital. And I don't like that. You know, that was from St. Francis de Sales, The Introduction to Devout Life. That was taken right from that book. But I'm glad he quoted it. It was good. And he got credit. I think it was great. But you said, however, a field hospital, what do you want to talk? So what did you put in that article? Because I think you had some good insights on a field hospital.
Yeah. Well, a field hospital is still a hospital, and not a hospice.
Yeah, that's
and the fact is, when people come to a field hospital, the doctors there and the nurses triage you. They determine who's the sickest, and we need to attend to right away. Who's hopeless? Now, in the church's case, nobody's hopeless. So in that sense, the field hospital analogy limps just a bit. But nevertheless, the goal is to rate people based on how sick they are, and then spend a lot of your time focused on the sickest people in order to return them to health.
Yeah.
And then you go down. So I agree with the Pope. The church needs to focus, as Jesus said, on the sick, not the healthy. The church needs to focus on those sinners. But how? That's the question. Yeah. Are we just going to put a Band-Aid on a melanoma and send somebody home and say, there, you're cured? No. Or, as I say, try to convince them that they're basically being hyped, like the guy in the confessional, that you're just being, they come to a field hospital with half their arm blown off. Yeah. Oh, it's just a flesh wound. You're a hypochondriac. You're just a here's a couple of aspirin. Now go home and leave us alone. All right. No, you're not going to minimize the sin. But that's precisely what you see so often. I don't want to say with this Pope, but with many of his supporters.
Of course.
In the episcopacy and at the Synod on Synodality, what you find are people who say they want to treat the field hospital as a place where sick people come in and are declared healthy without giving them any medicine.
Yeah.
That's hardly a hospital.
Well, your point in the article also, and I like this because I think it really hits the crutch of some of the challenges we're faced with. The church has pits mercy against truth is a grief of the highest order. Can you elaborate on that?
A grift of the highest order. It's basically a con.
Yeah.
It's a con job. You get people to come into the church by convincing them, hey, we got rid of all those old rules. Don't worry about the morality thing anymore. And yet that's a con. You get them to come into the church that way. But then once in the church, they find that it's actually serious business.
Yeah.
All right. That there remain a critical mass of Catholics who actually understand what the church is about, a critical mass of bishops and priests and lay people who still understand the dynamics of sin, grace, redemption, sacraments, the holy life, and so on. And so then you get people into the church under these false pretenses, and then all of a sudden, well, I need to go find a more liberal church. This church is just too conservative. I need to go get a liberal one. It's not conservative. It's just, you've just finally encountered a Catholic one. Okay.
Well, you just gave the story because storytelling is king when on the radio. And the story that I just come up with is a friend of mine said she sponsored a person in the RCIA program. And, fine. She prayed for him. She did all the things. And then he became a Catholic. And then she called him and said, hey, I didn't see you in church this Sunday. Everything okay? Just to check on her. And the guy says, well, yeah, but I just didn't feel like going to church today. So the sponsor says, well, I got to tell you something. Unless you got some serious reason, that's against the commandments, not going to church. You got to go to worship. Remember the commandments, 10 commandments? Yeah. Yeah. And the guy goes, well, nobody told me that in RCIA.
Right.
You see, there's an example of guy low information.
Anybody, any of the listeners ever been to the streets of New York City, Manhattan? You can find the street vendors who are grifters.
Yes.
They'll sell you a Gucci purse for $5. Now, normally, if you were to buy a brand new Gucci purse, it'd be $500, $1,000, $1,500 or more.
Yeah.
But you can get one with the Gucci logo on it on the streets of New York for $5 or $10. That's a con. That's a grift.
Right.
Okay. And so what these con artists are doing in the church by convincing people there's no such thing as sin is they're selling people essentially a knockoff version of Jesus. It's a counterfeit Jesus.
There you go.
It's a counterfeit Christ. It's not the real Christ. It's a different Christ altogether.
Well, my friend Father Bill Casey used to be the Father Superior for the Fathers of Mercy. Used to say it this way: the most merciless thing you can do is let someone wallow in their sin. Meaning, right. Come on. I mean, if I'm wounded and I'm sick, and this is what it comes down to, and I'm going to bring it back to your article, and that is the blessing of homosexuals. It seems to me, and I'm just going to, I think I quote your article when I said it was a pastoral fiasco or a mess, because the issue of blessing a couple, what is the couple? I mean, it's almost like gymnastics when it comes to speaking.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, come on, dude, tell me exactly what you really mean. So here's my question to you is, how does that apply here when the document that was written, I mean, you got an entire continent, almost all of African bishops saying, no, we can't do this. And so I don't mean to be critical of them. I'm just saying, I read it as a layman and I said, a couple for me is a husband and wife. Can't we just, when you say a couple, I always think of, a couple. I don't think of a same-sex couple. So I'm just asking you, can you clarify why there's such confusion in this document? That's my question.
Well, I think the document is confused because, as I like to say, it's actually a conclusion in search of an argument. And it doesn't really matter what the argument is, as long as it has a certain superficial plausibility, we're going to go with it. And the conclusion that they wanted from the get-go was we want to be able to bless homosexual couples.
Right.
Now, how can we do this without appearing to really bless homosexual couples?
Exactly.
Okay. Well, okay. So then Cardinal Fernandez invents a whole new kind of blessing, non-liturgical, non-sacramental blessings. He goes on and on and on for like 5 pages about here's a whole different kind of blessing we didn't really even know it really existed. And it's always been there. The priest can bless people and he's not really blessing them in a sacramental or liturgical way.
Right.
It's a non-sacramental. Newsflash, that's contrary to the Second Vatican Council. Vatican II taught that every single priestly blessing is embedded somehow, some way, no matter how far downstream, in the priest role as in persona Christi, as a priest, as someone Why, in other words, why is a gay couple, homosexual couple, why don't they just ask some average lay Catholic to lay hands on them and pray over them? Why are they seeking out a priest?
Oh, yeah, great question.
Why are they seeking out a priest in the first place? The reason why they want a priest in the first place is because they sense the full sacramental, holy orders, liturgical weight of the priesthood. They don't want Larry Chap, Joe, nobody.
Right.
Lane. I'm the last person they would want blessing. They want Father Skippy Toes blessing them. Okay. That's what they want.
Of course.
All right. And I mean, and the thing is, the cultural context has to be taken into consideration.
Yeah.
The people that wrote this document in Rome had to know in advance how it was going to be accepted and received among the general population. Immediately, as soon as it hit the ground, Father James Martin, S.J. in New York City, calls up the New York Times, has a photographer up in his apartment, calls up two married gay guys that he's known for years, says, come over to my apartment and I'll bless your marriage. And they come over and it's a big photo op. Now, that's all contrary to the stipulations put forward in the document that said it should be private, not publicized, non-liturgical. Right. It should be spontaneous. But Father Martin turns it into a photo op, and Father Martin is a favorite of this Pope.
That's a fact.
So the question then, is he going to be disciplined?
No.
Is any priest just today, a German bishop came out, I can't remember his name, said we're going to have liturgical blessing ceremonies, celebrations for all the people in irregular unions, gays, divorced and remarried. Come one, come all, we're going to bless you all. Now, that's contrary to fiducia supplicans. Is that German bishop going to be removed from office, as we've seen some more conservative bishops removed from office? I doubt it. I doubt it very highly.
No.
And so this is a conclusion in search of an argument. And the argument is incoherent. And the Africans have pointed this out. Many Italians and French bishops pointed it out. Polish bishops, American bishops pointed it out. All right. It's internally incoherent because, as the DDF itself, the Dicastery for the Doctrine of Faith itself, said in 2021,
it's right,
in its document that said you cannot bless these homosexual couples. Because you cannot bless sin, and there's no way to divorce the blessing from what is being blessed. And what is being blessed is a couple who are presenting themselves to you as a couple. And therefore, the presumption has to be, if it's a gay couple, that they are engaged in sinful relations.
Of course.
But the document goes out of its way to say that the priest should make no such judgments in advance, and certainly not interrogate anybody in advance, because we're not blessing the couple as a couple. We're blessing them as individuals.
Really?
Yeah, that's what it says. This is a blessing that's not really a blessing, blessing a couple that's not really a couple. It's blessing individuals who present themselves to you as a couple with a blessing that's not really a blessing on a couple that's not a couple. So follow that, everybody.
Figure that out.
And the African stood up and said, this makes no sense. You're asking us essentially to have a wink and a nod to what everybody knows what's really going on here. And what's really going on is that you are giving a green light to those priests that want to bless gay unions, period. End of discussion.
And Doctor, I think I also add, can you imagine the African church with the Muslims and the Protestants going and saying, you see, you Catholics, this is a great opportunity to convert you to Protestantism or to Islam. Am I onto something, or do you think that's an exaggeration?
Oh, big time. Look, many African bishops have brought that, Terry, they brought that very point up. We're out there evangelizing.
Right.
The African church is the only church that's getting millions of converts to come in, and they're evangelizing and they're doing well. But what they're up against are Pentecostal Protestant sects, and they're up against Muslims who are pointing at the Catholic Church and saying, you're a church filled with pedophile priests. You're a church filled with homosexuals. You're a church that, and so now you've got a papacy that's saying, go ahead and bless same-sex unions in so many ways. And these African bishops are yanking their hair out going, what are we going to do now?
Yeah, that's tough.